Hello, Narnach here. Welcome back to Path of Exile. We are playing in the Fall of Oriath beta, and this is wave 4 of the beta that adds quite a bunch of changes to the game, to some of the core mechanics and so forth. I made a separate video talking about all of that, so all the details I will have discussed there, but things relevant for this build I will also discuss here. So one of the things, small change, is that the resistance penalty for the merciless resistance penalty has once again been moved back to the end of Act 7. And by default, if you have already completed Act 7 before the change got applied, then you actually had negative 30 chaos and you only had the normal penalty. Doing Arakalia again successfully grants you the penalty. So I am currently at negative 60 chaos resist. All the other resistances have been penalized in the same way. And as such, I've had to shuffle my gear around a little bit. And also while running some areas, I did find some upgraded weapons. So we are now sporting some decent weapons. Okay, so beta changes. One of the big things is a change to how chill and shock damage are gonna work from here on forward. Before, you had a static effect, 30% slowdown from chill, 50% increased damage from shock, and that was just a static effect, and based on how much damage you dealt to the target, the effect would last longer. So it was, I think, 60 milliseconds per percentage of damage that you dealt, with a lower threshold of 300 milliseconds, or in effect that's 5% of the monster's max life. That is what you needed to do to apply chill or shock. Due to how much life bosses have, shock was effectively not feasible to apply to bosses using normal attacks, especially not if you were not even focusing on lightning. But that 50% increased damage taken, which effectively is a 50% more damage multiplier, it was just too good to not use. So all builds basically ended up with a Val lightning trap, because that was a reliable way to apply shocking ground, which gave 50% increased damage taken. That is no more the case. Now, both chill and shock last for 4 seconds. No matter how much damage you do, the effect is always 4 seconds. But the amount of damage that you do now determines how strong it is. So the 30% chill and 50% increased damage taken are now the upper limits of what they can do. They're hard caps. You can't ever do more damage than that, unless maybe unique items are going to mess with it. And you do those amounts of chill and shock if you crit or have a shocking hit or something against the monster for half of their life. So take away half the damage, they get chilled for 30%, or they get shocked for 50% if you were applying the effect. If you're doing it less, it linearly scales down to 0%. But you need to do at least a minimum of 5% shock or 5% chill in order to trigger the effect. So there's now nodes that increase the strength of chill and shock, and some effects around the place that will actually boost it. It's a little bit of a mess right now, because a lot of items don't really rely on it, and yet the changes have been made. So I took Val Lightning Trap out. Oh yeah, of course, that's an important thing. Val Lightning Trap, the shocking ground is now 20% rather than 50%, so you don't get full strength for free. And that significantly reduces the impact, and I no longer feel required or obligated to apply that much damage, or to actually use those effects. And instead I dropped it and I added increased area of effect to my Abyssal Cry. So I now shout further, and the explosion also reaches further. So I'm happy with that. And if you're now playing a chill build, then you'll have you might chill more often for a longer duration, so it's easier to keep things chilled, but the chill is not going to be as strong unless you really hit things hard. Okay. So meet Sin at the Sarn encampment. We have to find a way there. So we head to the right. So yeah, a little bit of an old intro to Act 8, but well, Act 8 and Beta 4 going together does mean that there have been some changes to the builds. Oh yeah, another thing, in Act 5 you can now buy threshold jewels. They are now for sale. Not all of the threshold jewels are there, but most of them are. So the net effect of that is that for a solo self-found player like me, or at least primarily solo self-found, threshold jewels are actually a reliable thing that you can get. They basically are now just a core part of the skills that they apply for, and they're something that you can account for in your build and actually just reliably use in your builds. So Viper Strike having a threshold jewel means I'm actually using it now. Is that a blade barrage? Yeah. So we now have the Viper Strike threshold jewel. Had to go out of my way a little bit in order to pick it up. Okay, also things stop trying to murder me. So still no, the amount of enemies that deal chaos damage is still at a pretty decent number. Okay, so we now have a growing agony over here. 2% increased damage with hits and poison for each poison on the enemy, and 10% chance per poison on the enemy to grant Unholy Might for 4 seconds. Given how many enemies are around most fights, Unholy Might is up, and it gives me extra chaos damage based on my physical damage. Percentage, I think 30%, but it's a nice bonus. I had to, I'm level 60 now actually, so I gained a couple skill points and I unassigned some points, and I have still actually to put back this 5% life to that I allocated here. Okay, anything else on the list before I really start pushing forward, because playing and talking not entirely great. So the resistance penalties, well, we've fixed that. We got the threshold jewel. Oh yeah, a couple of support gems have had some changes, and one of them is Unbound Ailments. The bottom line, supported skills deal 27% more ailment damage. That is new. It starts at 20 at level 1, and then every 2 levels afterwards you get 1% more ailment damage. So 3 more damage, I'm not gonna object. So I must admit, I like the increased area effect on Abyssal Cry. It definitely makes it easier to just affect large groups, also things that are maybe not in melee range. And just to set up more of a cascading effect, where the first wave of enemies exploding will trigger the second wave, which will then get poisoned and take a lot of damage, potentially triggering a third wave afterwards. And the energy shield, it now nicely bumps up and down depending on or in response to Abyssal Cry exploding and just hitting a lot of damage. Because of course the larger the area, the more enemies we hit, the more energy shield we recover. Stairs, okay, so it goes up. Ah, nice. It's like that map, the ramparts, the castle. I don't know, there's a map that also has a similar transition to this. You play out in the forest, and then after that you play up on the walls. Right, we've got more flasks now. I shuffled some things around. We are relatively mana stable. We got mana on hit with our one of our claws. We have 15 mana per second that just passively regenerates, as well as mana leech with all of our attack damage. So yeah, we didn't need the mana flask most of the time. And of course, taking it out allowed me to put a support flask in there. So now we have insta-heal with bleeding removal, we have Stipknight with burning removal, we have a Jade Flask with curse removal, we have a Amethyst Flask with poison removal, and we have a Silver Flask with freeze and chill removal. So its shock removal is not there. Then again, if shock got nerfed as much as it did also for monsters, I mean, I'm assuming it's a symmetrical change. Now even if we get shocked a little bit, it might not matter all that much. Okay, and you please explode. Like that. So there's the, and there is an upside to the whole shock balance changes thing. Okay, maybe just whirl through and then explode from this angle. This ought to get glorious. Exactly. They just explode all at once. Ooh. As I said, poison damage, it is a real damage type now. And you better get your resists up. It's why I'm actually running around with an Amethyst Flask. I rarely run around with Amethyst Flasks. Okay, so a little thing there. Just double checking that there's not a nice boss or something hidden here. Arcanist, that works. +4 level, Lightning Storm. Okay, speaking of things that could potentially shock you. So the shocking ground from that is of course only 20% increased damage taken. Ah, Burial Shrine. Yeah. So while we got some currency, that was all. So now let's enter Sarn. And for the Act 8 playthrough, everything is new, so I will be focusing on the lore. So if you don't really like the lore, then I'm sorry for that. This is the only playthrough where I will focus on the lore. All the series after this, I'm gonna ignore them. So hello there, Vegan and Verici. Things look a little green here. They don't look as good as they used to. So let's listen to all the lore. Or read it out loud. The Daedric Darktongue is the insidious infection that threatens to make septic the great and terrible wound that is Sarn. However, any uncertainty that I had as to her exact whereabouts has been sundered by the sheer stench of her presence. We shall have to deduce her location from those who know the area best, these locals that cling to Sarn like hungry maggots. Okay, that's that lore. Clarissa, you're still here. Wait, is that is that Tolman? Zombified Tolman? That would be just too twisted. Sarn is changing, and so are we who live here. There, Tolman, don't you worry. I love you. I'll think of something. You told me Tolman was gone. You were wrong. I found him. No, Tolman, I never gave up on you. His soul remains, flickering deep down inside. Oh, Tolman, I know you're in pain, but it'll be over soon. I promise. This is twisted. My heart aches for Greiger. I know the battle in which he is engaged. It's like my own. A fight to make sense of life in a land that deems life to be worthless. I don't know where he's gone, but I do know he's looking to find himself, his true self, as we all must do in our own time. Emperor Veruso. By all accounts, Tarkus Veruso was a ruthless despot, a man to rival even the likes of Dominus. Yet his heart of stone contained one precious seam, his love for his wife Chiara. So when the poor young woman died giving birth to Veruso's son, Caspiro, the grieving emperor threw aside his great convictions and placed his last hope in thaumaturgy, in the Ankh of eternity. Perhaps it was shame that drove Tarkus to lock the Ankh away, to steal such hopes from his descendants. It was he who had asked his people to turn their backs on the ancient arts. So what right had he to enjoy that which he forbade? Love gave him that right. Okay, you see where she's going with that. She wants to use it for Tolman. She understands it. The Ankh of Eternity was somehow able to restore the dead to the full bloom of life. There was nothing necromantic about it. Rather, it was a source of true resurrection. How it came to exist, I honestly don't know. A couple of inscriptions I read treated the Ankh as some sort of gift to Feruso from the Vaal. But surely the Vaal were long gone by Feruso's time, weren't they? No matter. Despite the vagaries of the Ankh's origins, Feruso used the Ankh to return his young wife from the deathbed to the wedding bed. The accounts are unanimous on that point. As it was for Feruso's love, so shall it be for mine. Okay, so she eventually will want us to find the Ankh. And she is just a vendor. No gems nor support jewels are available here. No Grigor here, but there is a path leading out into the toxic conduits, the sewers. Marabala.
Good to see you in Sarn once again. I wish that we could be greeting under fairer skies, yet this city remains clouded in strife. Lunaris, eternal goddess of the moon, and her sister Solaris of the sun have risen to reclaim what was once their own. Siblings equal in strength, mighty twin rivers converging, sweeping all before them. We are cornered animals, awaiting the deluge that will surely drown us. Yet, there exists a pair of ancient treasures, the Sun Orb and the Moon Orb. They are our hope, our desperation.
Okay. So the Solaris and Lunaris team is also why I'm wearing the Eclipse armor for the Act 8 playthrough. I felt it was fitting, and I do like how there is a sun and a moon, and it seems to cross over on the different sides. A little bit of dress up here. So we got the Eclipse weapon for the one hand, and we got a breach weapon effect for the other one, just to mirror things. And we got the Arcane Victorious wings on top, just to give a little bit of contrast to the back attachment. But I think I'll actually all playthroughs I'll just see if I can do some mixing and matching for either a appropriate look for an act or for the character itself. But in this case, it's just nice to be able to have something fitting.
Good to see you're still soldiering on, with all these gods in past horrors wandering around Sarn. I don't assume anyone's alive and kicking these days. If Sarn wasn't mad enough, now we've got some whip-tongued hag cooking up a stinking curse in the sewers. Took it from her mother-in-law at first. But no, based on my meagre historical knowledge, I reckon we have a certain Dodry dark tongue to contend with. Where in blazes is she hiding? I've no idea. So, the only way we're going to catch this witch is by getting our hands, and possibly a lot more, well and truly dirty. And by we, I mean you, of course. The sewers are no place for a simple businessman like me. Do us a favour. Head into them sewers and track that old hag down. Get her to reveal herself, and put her down. Ha! Better your eyes than mine, eh?
Wheeling and dealing Hagen, still alive and kicking, I see.
Quite the pretty pair, aren't they? Yeah, it's pretty bloody disturbing. That girl was once the sweetest lass I could name. Nowadays she's barking as batshite over that living corpse of hers. All it would take is a quick hard bash with a rock, and Tolman would no longer be a problem. Tempting, don't you think? Needing my eclectic expertise again, are we? Solaris and Lunaris got front and centre stage among them folks at the Eternal Empire. Solaris was thought to be the light of leadership, guiding and enlightening each emperor that sat the throne. In practice, most of them emperors turned out to be a bit dim. But then history and theology have never quite seen eye to eye. As for Lunaris, a goddess of the moon and earth, the mother of dreams and inspiration. Doesn't sound like a bad lady until you consider that dreams harbour nightmares and that inspiration is just one notion shy of insanity. Grigor left without a single word to me, rude bugger. But I suspect his poetic soul has been drawn back home to Izmir. A long journey, but a trip worth taking to find solace among one's own people. Of course, they'll get quite the shock when they see him. Let's hope familial love is as nearsighted as they say. There are the fine tales Grigor will be able to tell them, of course. Come to think of it, now that Dominus has been knocked off his perch, there's nothing to stop the Izamites from learning a thing or two from Grigor's stories. They might even consider invading this jewel and raid-class tarnished crown. I certainly hope they have just such an eye for opportunity. A man could make a tidy sum helping said invaders navigate Sarn and its many hazards.
Wow, that guy, he do anything to make some money. But Grigor going missing or disappearing. I wonder if we'll see him again, like some of the other characters, such as Silk, that disappeared, and also a lady in Act 6. People disappear and they turn up. Wonder if we're gonna see Grigor again later, or whether he indeed is gonna go to the Ezamites. And then of course the Ezamites, as Hagen suggests, they might actually go and invade this place, which would of course provide some nice future for content for the future. Still just the vendor he's always been. That's good. Marababa, you had some lore.
Grigor is the butterfly that has lost its wings to a cruel child, and this place of respite has become a cage for his pain, a breeding ground of bad memory. We spoke, and Grigor shared his resolve with me. He can no longer live with the torment that piety has injected into his heart. Like the warrior poet he is, Grigor has ventured into the unknown to find a cure for his body and mind, or die in the attempt.
Okay. They continue to remain mysterious about it.
The dead do not love the living, and the living cannot love the dead. People fear what they do not understand. I understand Clarissa. I am not frightened of her. I am frightened for her.
It's a more gentle way of putting it than Hagen did.
They walked our earth in the times of great strife, cruel and hideous shadows, cast against the clay wall of ruined abode. Thaumaturge Malachi grew them out of the vain ambitions of his dark imaginings. Emperor Cheetus believed that the Legionnaires belonged to him, that all gemling men would beat to the drum of his own crystalline heart. But as the silhouette of the Emperor faltered and fell, burned out by the light of true men, some of the Legion remained. The Catechism turned Legionnaire into monster, another mindless man of undeath. Yet this captain seems to have regained his faculties, some of his old warrior intelligence. I worry for the rest of his soldiers, how they may grow from mindless killing machines into something far worse.
Okay, I wonder if that's a little bit of foreshadowing of what we're gonna encounter further on. Because the Gemling Legionnaires, they actually in Act 3 in the marketplace, no, it was in the warehouse, wasn't it? Yeah, it was in the warehouse squares. That's where they made their appearance as a couple of uniques. It would be interesting to see them again, because it was a fun fight. Okay.
Welcome.
You don't have anything specific to say.
Fate will find you.
So, the Aspirants Plaza. Yeah, Leo, that's for PvP. And this bridge has now been broken. So, the only way forward is to go into the sewers, but looking at the time, 25 minutes is a good duration for first episode. So, A walk to town and a bunch of lore. That means we are now all ready and set to push forward into the sewers. Oh, haha! We got some lore from Sin. So before we end it, let's actually look or listen here. If we are drawn to see the dawn of a new era for humankind, the sun must be taught to behave herself. Upon that mighty span between Sarn's left hand and its right, Solaris burns to consume every single moment of existence, sparing no thought for life and its needs. She would see the world parched, barren before she yields to reason. The sun must be allowed to set, so that it might arise again as a blessing, not a curse. Okay. Self-loving Solaris. All the light in the world, yet blinded by her own pride. Not once did she pause to question the truth of her sister's betrayal. Instead, she gloated over her sister's transgressions, proclaiming herself greater and more honorable than Lunaris could ever be. I suppose one shouldn't be surprised when a sun deity takes the higher ground. We approach the zenith of her divine hunt, upon the bridge that chokes the great wet throat of Sarn. Lunaris, in a cold fury, has forgotten that the warming sun of morning is as life-giving as the cooling damp of evening. The empire Lunaris dreams of shall be lit by moon and twinkling stars, and life itself shall wither away in that perpetual night. I really like how he speaks very poetic. They did a good job writing his lines. One of two sisters who ruled the most populous and powerful of the ancient Asmerian tribes, Solaris was thought to guide the sun across the sky with threads of shimmering gold, whilst Lunaris saw to the wax and wane of moon with a sickle of purest silver. It was a peaceful partnership, until the trickster, Tang Mazu, happened upon their domain. In turning sister against sister, he saw the massacre of thousands, while concealing the source of their futile feud beyond all reckoning. Feel no pity for the moon. She's a cold and distant fool, far less radiant than she would suppose. Okay, so just double check.
So there you are.
I think everybody now has all their lore triggered. Exactly. Right, and with that, that's a good point to end it. So next episode, we're gonna actually start with the gameplay and probably fight our way towards Duete. But for now, I'm gonna thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye bye.